Detective Ethan Cole hated midnight calls. They were never about good news. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, rattling against a stack of unopened mail. The glowing screen told him what he already knew: another body, another sleepless night. He sat up, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes. Outside, the September rain hammered Manhattan, smearing the city's neon glow into streaks on the window pane. Cole threw on his jacket, holstered his service weapon, and left his one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of old coffee and loneliness. By the time he reached Fifth Avenue, flashing red and blue lights painted the slick pavement. A half-dozen uniforms had cordoned off the entrance of a gleaming high-rise. The building was too new, too clean, the kind of place where rent swallowed whole salaries. Yet here, on the marble steps, a crime scene tape fluttered like a warning banner. Detective Cole, Officer Ramirez called, lifting the tape for him to duck under. Her eyes were tense, the kind of tension that meant the scene inside wasn't pretty. The lobby smelled of bleach and lilies, a faint perfume from the giant vase near the elevators. Cole's shoes echoed as he followed Ramirez to the private penthouse elevator. Victim's female, mid-20s, Ramirez reported. Name's Claire Whitman. Lived here alone. Neighbors called when they heard screaming. By the time security got up, it was too late. Cole gave a grunt of acknowledgement, jaw tightening. He'd heard the same setup 100 times. Neighbors too late, security too slow, and another young woman whose story ended in blood. The elevator opened to a silent hallway. For a moment it felt more like a hotel than a crime scene. But when Cole stepped inside Claire's apartment, reality slammed into him. Blood had pooled across the polished marble floor, glistening under the harsh ceiling lights. The victim lay sprawled beside a shattered glass coffee table, her blonde hair matted crimson. She wore a silk robe torn at the shoulder, as if ripped in a struggle. Crime scene techs buzzed around the body, snapping photos, swabbing surfaces. Cole crouched, his eyes scanning details like a machine, the angle of the wound, the broken stem of a wine glass, the faint scent of expensive perfume mixed with iron, time of death. He asked the medical examiner. Between 11 and midnight, came the reply. Single stab wound to the chest, clean, precise. Killer knew where to strike. Cole frowned. This wasn't random, it wasn't messy. Whoever did this had intent. On the far side of the living room, a purse lay open on a chair. He picked through it with gloved hands, credit cards, makeup, a crumpled receipt from a bar downtown, time-stamped just an hour before the murder. Ramirez, Cole said, holding up the slip. Find out who she met at this bar. As he stood, he caught sight of the floor, a ceiling windows overlooking Fifth Avenue. From up here, the city looked calm, oblivious. But Cole knew better. Somewhere in the neon shadows, a killer was already vanishing into the night, and this case, he could feel in his gut, was only the beginning. Detective Ethan Cole stayed in the apartment long after the body had been taken away. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint hum of the city through the glass windows. A penthouse like this wasn't just an apartment. It was a statement of wealth, power, and privilege. And privilege never came without strings attached. He paced the room, letting the scene replay in his mind. Claire Whitman hadn't been some anonymous victim in a back alley. She had lived on Fifth Avenue, surrounded by the city's elite. That fact alone guaranteed this case would come with pressure. From the press, from the mayor's office, from anyone who wanted the scandal buried before sunrise. Detective Ramirez approached, handing him a slim folder. Preliminary background: Claire Whitman, 26, worked in marketing for Ravelson Properties. Cole raised a brow. Ravelson Properties. Even in the NYPD, the name carried weight. The Ravelsons weren't just real estate moguls. They were one of the most powerful families in New York, with towers stretching from Wall Street to Central Park. Which Ravelson? Cole asked. Elliot Ravelson runs the company now. The father retired years ago. Claire's address and salary don't add up to a penthouse like this, though. Ramirez hesitated. Unless she was more than an employee. Cole closed the folder, the answer already forming in his head. Mistress, girlfriend, kept woman. The possibilities spilled into darker places. A secret affair with a man whose family had enough money to silence anyone. He moved back to the broken coffee table. A faint smear of lipstick stained the edge of a wine glass still intact. Another glass, unbroken, rested on a side table across the room. 2 glasses, 2 people. Someone had been drinking with Claire tonight, and only one of them had walked away. Cole bagged both glasses himself. He didn't trust the evidence text to keep this case untouched if a name like Ravelson started floating around. Too many files had vanished that way. Who found her? He asked. Security guard. Responded to the neighbor's call about screaming. By the time he forced the door, the killer was gone. Cole's jaw tightened. A clean exit. No prints on the knife. No obvious sign of forced entry. The killer had been confident, maybe even familiar with the building's layout. He turned back to Ramirez. Get me a list of everyone who had access to this penthouse. Building staff, maintenance, cleaning crews, and run Claire's phone records. I want to know who she spoke to in the last 24 hours. Ramirez nodded and slipped out. Cole stood at the window, staring at the city below. In 20 years on the job, he had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts told him this wasn't a crime of passion, despite the blood on the marble floors. This was controlled, calculated. Whoever killed Claire Whitman hadn't just wanted her dead. They wanted her erased, and Ethan Cole was certain that meant she had known something worth dying for. Detective Ethan Cole always believed the first suspect was rarely the killer, but they were almost always hiding something. By morning, he had an address and a name. Daniel Mercer, 28, Claire Whitman's boyfriend. The man lived in a loft in Tribeca, an expensive neighborhood for someone with no visible income. Cole arrived just as the sun was clawing its way up over the skyline, painting the streets a dirty gold. Ramirez trailed behind him, coffee in hand, looking like she'd slept less than he had. Daniel opened the door after the third knock. He was tall, sharp, jawed, and barefoot, his t-shirt wrinkled like he'd just thrown it on. His eyes were bloodshot, but not from sleep. Cole recognized the glossy haze of someone who partied hard and often. Detective Cole, NYPD, Ethan said, flashing his badge. We need to talk about Claire Whitman. The name hit Daniel like a blow. His face drained. Claire, what happened? She's dead. Cole said flatly. He'd long ago learned not to sugarcoat death. Daniel staggered back, bracing himself against the doorframe. No, that's impossible. I was with her last night. Cole's gaze sharpened. Where? Daniel swallowed. At Luna Bar on the Lower East Side. We had drinks. He broke off, his throat tightening. She left early. Said she wasn't feeling well. I should have gone with her. Cole studied him carefully. The timeline matched the bar receipt found in Claire's purse. But something about Daniel's tone didn't sit right. Guilt, yes. But guilt about what? What time did she leave? Cole pressed. Around 11, maybe a little after I stayed. Some friends were there. He rubbed his temples. You can ask them. Oh, we will, Cole said. And what time did you get home? Daniel hesitated. Late 2, maybe 3. That's a wide window, Cole said. Anyone see you? Daniel shook his head. No, I walked. I needed air. Cole felt Ramirez shift beside him, scribbling notes. An alibi built on maybe, and late, wasn't worth much. Mr. Mercer, Cole said slowly, Claire was murdered in her apartment around midnight. That puts you without a solid alibi right when she died. Daniel's jaw clenched. You think I killed her? I think you're hiding something. Cole replied. Daniel's hands curled into fists, then loosened. Claire, she was under pressure from her job from Elliot Ravelson. He stopped, biting the inside of his cheek. Cole leaned in. He what? Daniel shook his head quickly. Nothing. Forget it. But Cole didn't forget. That slip was worth more than anything Daniel had said so far. He straightened. We'll need you to come down to the precinct. Answer some more questions. Daniel opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again. His eyes darted toward the skyline outside the loft windows as though the city might swallow him up. Cole followed his gaze. Somewhere out there, between Tribeca's towers and Fifth Avenue's glittering streets, lay the truth. And Daniel Mercer had just confirmed one thing. Claire Whitman's death was tied to the Ravelson Empire. By noon, Detective Ethan Cole was back at the precinct, the weight of the Whitman case pressing down on him like a storm cloud. The bullpen was alive with the usual noise, phones ringing, detectives barking orders, the clatter of keyboards, but beneath it all ran a hum of tension he couldn't quite place. He dropped Daniel Mercer into interview room 2 with Ramirez, leaving her to tighten the screws a little. Sometimes suspects cracked easier when Cole wasn't the one asking questions. He needed air, perspective, and most of all, distance from the obvious lies Mercer had fed him. Cole poured himself a cup of bitter coffee from the communal pot. The kind that tasted like it had been brewed back in '98. Sergeant O'Leary, a grizzled veteran who'd been riding a desk since his knees gave out, sidled up next to him. "Cole," O'Leary muttered, his voice low. "Word of advice. Be careful with this one." Cole raised a brow. Meaning the girl wasn't just some marketing assistant. She was tied up with the Ravelsons, that family's got half this city on payroll, cops included. O'Leary's eyes swept the room as if checking for ears. "Watch where you step." Cole's jaw tightened. "You saying this case is off limits?" "I'm saying." O'Leary hesitated, then sighed. "Some cases, they solve themselves. Don't dig too deep." Cole set his coffee down hard, the liquid sloshing. "A 26-year-old woman is dead. I don't care who signs the checks. I'm not shelving this." O'Leary gave him a weary look, one that said he'd seen too many detectives ground up in the machine, then shuffled away. Before Cole could stew on it further, Ramirez emerged from the interview room. Her face was unreadable, which told Cole plenty. "Well?" he asked. "He's nervous," Ramirez said. Keep circling back to Elliot Ravelson's name. He didn't say it outright, but it's clear Claire had some kind of relationship with him. Romantic, business, maybe both. Mercer's jealousy was boiling. Cole nodded. It fit, but something in his gut told him Mercer wasn't the killer. He was messy, emotional, desperate. Claire's murder had been too precise for someone like him. Captain Brewer called Cole into his office then, shutting the blinds behind him. "Ethan, I've got pressure from upstairs. The commissioner himself wants updates every hour. The mayor's office is calling too. They want this tied up clean." Cole folded his arms. Clean doesn't solve murders. Evidence does. Brewer gave him a long, measured look. "Just remember, some cases can bury you if you're not careful. Don't make enemies you can't fight." Cole left the office with a bitter taste in his mouth. First O'Leary, now Brewer. The message was clear: back off. But Ethan Cole didn't back off. Not when there was a killer out there walking free. As he lit a cigarette outside the precinct, rain misting down in the gray afternoon, a thought clawed at him. If Claire Whitman had been close to Elliot Ravelson, then her death wasn't just a murder. It was a message, and Cole needed to figure out who the message was meant for, before someone else ended up dead. Detective Ethan Cole knew when a case stopped being about a single victim. Claire Whitman's murder was already pulling at threads that led to something larger, something stitched into the city itself. That night, he met Ramirez in the cramped records room of the precinct. The overhead light flickered, bathing them in a sickly glow. Ramirez had a manila folder open, papers spread across the table. Claire's emails, she said, tapping the printouts. IT pulled them from her work account before Ravelson's lawyers could lock everything down. "Look at this." Cole scanned the pages. Buried among company memos and marketing drafts was a string of messages flagged confidential. They referenced Project Harborview, a massive redevelopment plan on Brooklyn's waterfront. They're pushing out entire neighborhoods, Ramirez explained. Buyouts, intimidation, forced evictions, but it's not just legal pressure. There are rumors of threats, fires, accidental gas leaks. Cole's jaw tightened. Classic mob tactics, wrapped in corporate packaging. exactly, and Claire, Ramirez slid another sheet forward. She was the one handling the public messaging. From what I can tell, she found out the Ravelsons weren't just leaning on politicians. They were working with the Mancini crime family. Cole's eyes narrowed. The Mancinis were old-school Brooklyn mob, dangerous but careful. If Claire had uncovered their partnership with the Ravelsons, she'd have been sitting on a powder keg. Ramirez lowered her voice. Ethan, if this is true, it's not just about one murder. It's about money, power, and blood. And if the Ravelsons and the Mancinis are in bed together, they'll do anything to keep it quiet. Cole leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. He remembered the blood on Claire's marble floor, clean, precise, not rage, business. She hadn't just been killed, she'd been silenced. Find me a paper trail, he said. Emails, wire transfers, shell companies, anything that ties Ravelson properties to the Mancinis. Ramirez nodded, though worry clouded her eyes. Later that evening, Cole drove down to the Brooklyn docks. The night was damp, the air thick with salt and diesel. Harborview's construction site loomed like a skeleton in the fog. Steel beams jutting against the sky, cranes frozen in eerie stillness. Cole wasn't supposed to be there, but he'd learned long ago that answers never lived in boardrooms. They lived in shadows, in the places respectable men avoided. A black SUV was parked near the chain link fence, engine idling. Two men in dark coats stood outside, smoking. Their posture was wrong. Alert, watchful. Not construction workers, not security, muscle. Cole stayed in his car, watching. One of the men pulled out a phone, speaking quickly in Italian. Accented English. Cole caught fragments through the open window. Deal goes through. No more delays. Ravelson wants it clean. Ravelson, there it was again. Cole's pulse quickened. The threads were tangling into a rope, one that could strangle the city if he wasn't careful. As he eased his car back into the fog, a cold certainty settled in his gut. Claire Whitman hadn't died because of who she loved. She'd died because of what she knew. Detective Ethan Cole knew better than to chase mob whispers without backup. But backup didn't always come in the form of a partner or a precinct. Sometimes it came from the street, from the people who survived by knowing things others wanted buried. That's why, the following night, Cole found himself slipping into a dim bar on the edge of Chinatown. The air smelled of stale beer and fried dumplings, the kind of place where the jukebox was always broken and nobody asked questions. Sitting in a corner booth was Louis Spider Vega, a wiry man with tattooed knuckles and eyes that never stopped moving. Spider had been feeding Cole scraps of intel for years. Sometimes it was gold, sometimes garbage, but it was always dangerous. Detective Cole, Spider said, grinning with too many teeth, didn't think I'd see you again. Thought maybe the city chewed you up already. Cole slid into the booth across from him, still chewing, and I need answers, Spider, about the Mancinis. Spider chuckled. Careful, man, you don't say that name in bars like this. Not unless you want your teeth decorating the floor. Cole leaned in. Claire Whitman, penthouse on 5th. Word is, she got close to something she shouldn't have. Something about Harborview. For the first time, Spider's grin faltered. He glanced around the room, then lowered his voice. You didn't hear it from me, but yeah. Harborview's dirty, real dirty. Ravelson put up the money, Mancini's cleared the land. Fires, accidents, threats. People vanish, apartments go up. It's business, New York style. Cole's jaw clenched. In Claire, Spider drummed his fingers nervously. She found out. I heard she was gonna talk. Maybe to the press, maybe to the feds. Doesn't matter now, does it? Someone shut her up before she could open her mouth. Cole's stomach tightened. The pieces fit too well, but Spider's tone told him there was more. Who gave the order? Spider leaned back, shaking his head. You're asking me to sign my death warrant, detective. Mancini's don't forgive leaks, and the Ravelsons, they don't need guns. They got judges and cops in their pocket. Cole slid a folded 20 across the table. Spider didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled his jacket tighter, eyes darting to the door. I shouldn't even be sitting here, but you didn't hear it from me. Claire wasn't the only one. There's a list, names of other people they're watching, journalists, activists, even a city councilman. Cole froze. Where's the list? Gone, vanished after she died. Spider's voice cracked slightly, but if you're smart, you'll stop digging. People who dig around the Mancinis end up in dumpsters, or not found at all. Before Cole could press him further, Spider slid out of the booth and disappeared into the shadows at the back of the bar. Cole sat there, the hum of neon buzzing overhead, a knot forming in his chest. Claire Whitman had been silenced to protect a deal worth billions, and now there was a list of others marked as threats. The city wasn't just hiding a murder, it was hiding a conspiracy, and Ethan Cole had just stepped straight into its crosshairs. Detective Ethan Cole returned to the precinct after midnight, the city still slick with rain. Spider's warning clung to him like smoke. A list, journalists, activists, politicians, people marked for silence. If the Mancinis and the Ravelsons were working hand in glove, the conspiracy wasn't just criminal, it was systemic. But the first step was figuring out who inside his own house he could trust. The bullpen was half empty, a scattering of night shift cops yawning at their desk. Cole headed straight for the evidence locker. He wanted another look at Claire Whitman's purse and phone. Maybe something had been overlooked. When he arrived, the steel cage door was already open. Inside, Officer Grady, broad shoulders, buzz cut, a reputation for taking shortcuts, was signing paperwork. Too quickly. Cole frowned. "Grady, what are you doing in there?" Grady stiffened. "Captain's orders, transferring Whitman's personal effects to storage downtown." Cole's gut twisted. He hadn't authorized that transfer, neither had Ramirez, at 1 in the morning. Orders are orders, Grady said, but his eyes avoided Cole's. Cole stepped forward, voice low. "Funny thing about orders, they usually come in writing. You got a signed transfer slip." Grady hesitated. Too long. Then he shoved the clipboard into Cole's chest. "You got a problem. Take it up with Brewer." Cole skimmed the slip. The captain's signature was there, but the ink looked too fresh, the handwriting sloppy. A forgery. By the time Cole looked up, Grady was already locking the cage. His jaw was tight, his posture stiff. Not guilt, fear. Someone had leaned on him. Cole let it drop for the moment, but his blood ran cold. Evidence was being tampered with. Files could vanish next, and once the trail went dark, Claire Whitman's murder would dissolve into another unsolved statistic. He left the locker room and found Ramirez waiting near his desk, arms crossed. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked. Cole nodded grimly. "We've got leaks. Claire's purse is being pulled without authorization. Somebody upstairs wants this case dead." Ramirez's eyes flicked to the captain's office. The blinds were closed, but light still glowed behind them. "Brewer," she whispered. Cole didn't answer. He didn't have to. Instead, he lowered his voice further. "From now on, we keep duplicates of everything. Photos, files, recordings. If the official trail goes missing, we'll have our own." Ramirez gave a short nod. "Got it." Cole lit a cigarette on the steps outside, staring at the precinct's brick facade. He'd worn the badge for almost 2 decades. He'd believed in the shield, in justice. But tonight, for the first time in years, he felt the weight of betrayal pressing down. If cops were moving evidence, if captains were signing off on cover-ups, then the rot wasn't just in the streets. It was in the department itself. Spider's warning echoed in his ears. People who dig end up in dumpsters. Cole exhaled a stream of smoke, eyes narrowing at the skyline. He wasn't stopping, not now, but he knew one thing with chilling certainty. The enemy wasn't just out there. It was wearing a badge too. Detective Ethan Cole's phone buzzed just after 2 a.m. Ramirez's voice came through, sharp and urgent. "Ethan, we've got movement." A CI down by Red Hook spotted one of the Mancini's runners meeting with a guy from Ravelson's office. "He's carrying something. Could be the missing files." Cole grabbed his jacket and gun. "Where?" "Pier 37. He's there now." Minutes later, Cole's unmarked sedan cut through the wet Brooklyn streets, wipers slashing against the rain. The docks loomed ahead, cranes towering like rusted skeletons. Sodium lights bathed the water in sickly orange. Ramirez was already waiting in a parked cruiser. She pointed toward the pier. There, black hoodie, backpack, he's meeting with someone in a dark sedan. Cole's eyes narrowed. Even at a distance, the exchange looked wrong. The man in the hoodie handed over a folder, then glanced nervously around. The sedan's passenger gave him a nod and pocketed the bundle. Cole muttered, "That's our guy." They stepped out of the cars, moving fast and low. But the runner spotted them first. His head jerked, eyes wide, and then he bolted. "Police!" Cole shouted, breaking into a sprint. The runner tore down the pier, splashing through puddles, sneakers slapping wood. He cut between stacks of shipping containers, weaving like a rabbit through the maze. Cole's lungs burned, but he pushed harder, boots pounding after him. The man glanced back once, fumbling inside his hoodie. A flash of metal, gun, Ramirez yelled. Cole dove behind a container as bullets ripped through the rain. Sparks flew from steel, echoing like thunder. The runner fired blindly, then kept running. Cole pushed up, adrenaline flooding his veins. He chased through the narrow lane, closing the gap. The runner vaulted a low fence, landing hard on the wet pavement. Cole followed, his knee screaming in protest as he hit the ground. The man scrambled toward a waiting motorcycle, chained near the fence. Not tonight, Cole thought. He lunged, grabbing the backpack strap and yanking hard. The runner twisted, slamming an elbow into Cole's ribs. Pain shot through him, but he held on. Ramirez caught up, tackling the man from the side. They all went down in a tangle of fists and rain. The runner thrashed like a trapped animal, teeth bared. He clawed for the gun in his waistband. Cole pinned his wrist, forcing it against the ground until the pistol clattered free. Ramirez cuffed him, breath ragged. For a long moment, only the rain filled the silence. Cole hauled the backpack open. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a stack of documents, company memos, bank transfers, property ledgers. Some bore the Ravelson logo, others had names scrawled in Claire Whitman's handwriting. Cole's chest tightened. This was it. Proof, the connection between the Ravelsons and the Mancinis, evidence powerful enough to bring down empires, if it survived long enough to see daylight. The runner snarled up at him. "You don't know what you're in, cop. This city eats men like you." Cole tightened his grip on the files, then let it choke on me. A detective, Ethan Cole, dropped the seized documents onto his desk with a heavy thud. The precinct was quiet at dawn, the bullpen washed in pale gray light. Ramirez hovered near his shoulder, scanning the stack with wide eyes. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, property deeds, all pointing to the same name, Elliot Ravelson. Cole exhaled slowly. There it is. Proof. Ramirez's voice was hushed. "This isn't just business, Ethan. These transfers line up with every Mancini front company in Brooklyn. The Harborview project is a cover for laundering millions." Cole tapped a memo marked with Claire Whitman's initials. It detailed discrepancies in the Harborview accounts, along with notes about unreported partners. Claire had been preparing a dossier of her own. She'd found the rot, and someone had killed her for it. Ravelson ordered the hit. Cole said grimly, Claire was a liability. She threatened to expose the deal, and he couldn't let that happen. Before Ramirez could respond, Captain Brewer's office door opened. Brewer's eyes locked on the papers, then on Cole. His expression was unreadable. "Cole, with me, now." Inside the office, Brewer shut the blinds and closed the door. He didn't sit. He didn't even glance at the evidence. Instead, he leaned on the desk, lowering his voice. "You've stepped into something you don't understand, Ethan. These people, Ravelson, the Mancinis, they don't play by rules. You keep pushing, you'll end up like Claire." Cole's jaw tightened. "That a threat, Captain?" Brewer's silence was answer enough. "You're in on it?" Cole said quietly, realization sinking like ice in his gut. "That's why evidence went missing. That's why you've been telling me to drop it. You're protecting them." Brewer's eyes hardened. "I'm protecting the department, the city. If you burn Ravelson, you burn half the people who sign our paychecks. You want to torch everything for one dead girl." Cole's voice dropped to a growl. "For justice." For a moment, neither man moved. The air was thick with unspoken choices. Then Brewer straightened, his face stone. "You walk away, Cole. Right now, or you're finished." Cole didn't answer. He turned, opened the door, and walked out. Ramirez caught his eye. "Well?" He shook his head. "Brewer's compromised. We're on our own." They didn't have time to plan their next move. A commotion erupted at the entrance to the bullpen. A man in a tailored suit walked in, flanked by 2 lawyers. His presence radiated wealth, arrogance, and power. "Elliot Ravelson." "Detective Cole," Ravelson said smoothly, his voice calm as silk. "I hear you've been digging into my business. Dangerous hobby." Cole stared at him, adrenaline coiling tight in his chest. Here was the man who'd ordered Claire Whitman's death. The mask was off now, and the devil had a face. "You killed her," Cole said. Ravelson smiled faintly, like a man humoring a child. "Careful, detective. Accusations like that can ruin careers." Cole stepped closer, fists clenched. "Careers can be rebuilt. Lives can't." The room seemed to hold its breath. Cops shifted uncomfortably, but no one moved. Ravelson had walked into the lion's den without fear, because he knew half the lions worked for him. But Ethan Cole wasn't one of them, and Ravelson could see it in his eyes. Detective Ethan Cole knew the moment Elliot Ravelson walked into the precinct that the fight was no longer about evidence. It was about survival. Ravelson had power, money, and half the department in his pocket. Cole had one thing left, the truth. That night, Cole and Ramirez met in a rundown safe house in Queens. Documents spread across a rickety table. The files from the runner, Claire's notes, even copies of bank statements. They had enough to expose the deal, but exposure meant going around Brewer, around the department itself. "The feds," Ramirez said. "It's our only shot. If we go internal, the files vanish and we vanish with them." Cole nodded. He'd already made his choice. "Then we go federal, tonight." But Ravelson had anticipated them. As they left the safe house, headlights cut through the rain. A black SUV skidded across the street, blocking their path. Doors flew open. Mancini enforcers poured out, guns drawn. "Go." Cole barked, shoving Ramirez toward cover. Bullets cracked against brick as they ducked behind a dumpster. Cole fired back, his Glock barking in the night, the muzzle flash lighting his face in staccato bursts. Ramirez clipped one man in the leg. Another fell when Cole's shot found his shoulder, but the last came hard, closing the distance. Cole grappled with him in the rain. Slick street, fists and fury, until the enforcer's gun skidded away. Cole slammed him against the SUV, breathing hard, rage boiling in his veins. "Ravelson sent you," Cole hissed. The man spat blood and laughed. "Ravelson owns this city. You're already dead, cop." Cole dropped him, cuffed him, and grabbed the SUV phone, still buzzing on the seat. A text glowed on the screen. "Finish it. No survivors. E.R." It was the proof he needed, not just paper trails. Intent, murder orders. By dawn, Cole and Ramirez were standing in the FBI Manhattan office, files and the phone laid out like weapons. Federal agents swarmed, eyes widening as the scope unraveled. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, murder. Ravelson's empire wasn't untouchable anymore, but victory came at a cost. Within hours, the media exploded with the story. Ravelson was indicted. The Mancinis were named in federal warrants, and Captain Brewer quietly retired, vanishing into the wind before charges could land. Cole sat on the precinct steps that night, cigarette smoke curling into the humid air. Ramirez dropped beside him, exhaustion etched into her face. "You know they'll come after us," she said. "Even if Ravelson goes down, men like him don't stay buried. They'll find ways to claw back." Cole nodded. "Yeah, but Claire Whitman gets her justice. That's enough for now." He stared at the city skyline glittering with neon and shadows. Justice here was never clean. It was messy, bought, sold, stolen. But sometimes, for a brief moment, the truth cut through. Cole flicked the cigarette into the street and stood. "Come on, partner, we've got work to do." The city wasn't saved, it never would be, but as long as Ethan Cole had breath in his lungs, it wouldn't be surrendered either. And in the shadows of Fifth Avenue, justice still had a fighting chance. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.